Hi there, thanks for joining us for this talk. Oh, sorry. It wasn't supposed to be the first slide, no. For this talk about Java Specification Request 371, better known as MVC 1.0, which is going to be in Java E8, the upcoming new enterprise standard. So this nice guy besides me, with the presenter note not working, remote. This is Ivar Grimstad. If you're looking for top person to present about this topic, he will be in the top ranks of the list because not only is he a principal consultant for Cybercom in Sweden, he is on not less than 3 expert groups in the Java E8 space, and most notably on 371. So something is not right. Oh. Okay.
There you go.
We should get. Sorry.
I'll go back. There we are. And if you're maybe if you're looking for the worst person to talk about this specification, then Rene is probably in the top rank. He's an individual consultant and trainer, and amongst others, he works for trainer for Spring Framework and sometimes for JSF. But most notably, he's the project chair for the Apache Struts project.
Anyone not knowing Apache Struts, just look for an elderly-looking person sitting right next to you. Might be able to explain what it means. So, but if I can do anything, I can help you to give some historical context about what this JSR is about. So, basically, we had nothing by the time, and then came Servlet specification, and we had some problems to solve our problems within the technical specification there, because the Servlet specification helped us to deal with the protocol HTTP, but it led to fairly technical code, and it was hard to get into the business domain. So some people thought it would be a good idea to start building a front controller framework based on the Servlet specification, and to have a very opinionated view how to get into the model view controller space afterwards. These folks were known as the group that later created Struts 1, which is luckily now retired. And they invented a front controller framework, which then had the idea of having MVC behind it, and they called their opinionated view to these controllers that you would write actions. Since then, this term came something that everyone kept using. It's called action-based web frameworks, and there came a lot trying to do things a little bit better than Struts 1, of course, but they have in common the basic architecture of the work, and they are really built along request and response. So this is the really most important thing that you would like to address with this. But then there came some people up and say, okay, we have some serious business needs, and we have serious business applications, and we want to go into the browser and do stuff. And actually, they thought like, okay, we need a better tool to address this. And they've learned from the desktop space that component-based working, component-based architecture, having stateful components and then having events to be consumed and to be thrown, is a nice way to work with this problem domain. So this marked the rise of frameworks like JSF, which was addressed in Java E. And basically, it helps you to get really, really fast in the business domain. So if you look like something, someone might have had a problem like this, having some data table or stuff like that, you're really fast to get this done in JSF. But people thought that action-based frameworks would be over then, and nobody would longer care about this, but this actually didn't happen. Various reasons were there, one of which is this handsome guy co-invented, Roy T. Feeling, co-invented the HTTP protocol, and he coined the term REST, which is an architectural style. And if you look for a framework that supports you to write RESTful applications in the web space, you're pretty well off choosing an action-based framework. So actually, this helped to keep us alive. I'm not dead yet. So actually, it boils down to component-based frameworks try to help you with complex stateful components and abstract away the request-response model, while action-based frameworks try to hide away some of the technical details, help you to go quite easily into the business domain, and on the other hand, keep things stateless and really embrace the request-response model. So it boils down to you should have the right tool for the problem at hand. So if you are going to write a serious business application, JSF is great for you. On the other hand, if you write a blog application and do want full control over URLs and stuff and SEO and whatnot, it would be a nice choice to look after an action-based framework. So I think we should give you an introduction. Ivar will give you an introduction, who is the best one to do so, about how it works, JSR 371, and I will try to give it a test drive later.
Yes. So in this section, we'll explore a little bit more of the details of the MVC 1.0 specification, or JSR 371, which is called. And the first question is why? Why do we create an action-based framework for Java EE, and why do we do it now? Right? If we've been fine so far with what we got, why do we really need it now? And the answer to that question is that the community really wants MVC. And this study was done prior to Java EE 8, and more than 60% answered yes in the community study for Java EE 8 that they wanted MVC. And there was apparently no favorite out there either, so more than 50% answered actually not sure when they were asked where should we look for inspiration. So it's not like we could just take like Struts or Spring MVC and just do the same thing in Java EE. It was really no favorite out there. Another view of this community study is that MVC is actually one of the most wanted features of Java EE 8, because it's nearly 8% the want this in Java EE 8. So it's a wanted feature by the community. So this answers more than the question why. And as we said, it is an action-based MVC. It's not a replacement of JSF. JSF is component-based, and JSF is going to live on, and MVC will be action-based and live beside JSF. So it will be a complement, not a replacement. Another objective of MVC is that it shall leverage existing Java EE technologies and use existing technologies where possible. And that means that you need a Java EE container to run it. And that may be a good thing or a bad thing, but that is one of the objectives of this specification. And for the model, this means that we will typically use technologies like CDI, bean validation, and JPA. And for the view, you could use facelets, JSPs, and more. And the controller is something new. And should it be some new technology, or should it be built up on something existing? And the expert group for JSR 371 is pretty diverse. It represents from many of the large players in the business, and there are also a couple of individuals members, me included. So if we look at the key decisions we've done in this expert group, or maybe I should say key decision. There was a long discussion, I think it was about a year ago. Should we build on JXRS or Servlet? What should be the underlying technology of MVC? And after a long discussion, and actually we had a vote in the expert group, we landed on JXRS. And personally, I think that is a very good choice, and I'll show you that later when we show some code examples. So I guess you're probably tired of slides now. Bear with me, there will be some more slides, but at least we'll look at some code in the slides. So first, the controller. You start up with just a basic POJO. In this case, the hello controller. Then I add a @path annotation, and those who are familiar with JXRS see that this is exactly the same as you would do for a JXRS resource. And this is one of the advantages of building on top of JXRS is it's already there and we can use it and we don't have to do anything new. So it's familiar to us. And then we introduce the @controller annotation. And in this example, it's on class level. And that means that all the methods in this class are controller methods. I can also put the @controller annotation on a method and have a controller method. And that means I can mix both JXRS resources and controllers for MVC in the same class if I want to. And that is totally up to you as a developer, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. But it's the flexibility that JXRS gives us. So that's basically what there is to the controllers. So what do you think? Looking good so far?
Looks a little bit easier than Struts 1, I would say.
Yeah, looks good. Yeah. So let's look at some views. If we have the controller that we created in the last steps, and we add a simple method, which we annotate with @get, and that is also from JXRS. So here is another place where we can actually use the same technology as JXRS underneath. And we just return the string hello JSP, and that's a little weird in JXRS. But here, actually, the @controller kicks in, and this will look for a page called hello JSP, which is located under WebInf views. This is configurable, so you can put it wherever you want, but this is a default. And currently, this is a JSP example, but currently the reference implementation supports JSPs, facelets, time, lift, free marker, mustache, velocity, ASCII doc, and I guess lots of more. They're coming all the time. It's very pluggable to create your own view engine. Another way of showing which you are going to redirect is to create an instance of viewable. And then the viewable encapsulates the view and how it should be processed, so you have a little bit more control of it. You can also go a little more low level and use the response return type from JXRS. So this is very similar to how you do it in a JXRS resource, where the entity is the view. Or you can use the new @view annotation. And this is new for this specification. And if you have a void return type, then you need to have the @view annotation on it. You can also put the @view annotation on the class level, and then all methods in this controller will redirect to the same view. So that concludes the controller and the view. So let's look at the model. If we have the controller we had in the last slide, and we create a CDI managed bean, which in this case is request scoped, and it just has a message and a getter and a setter. Then in the controller we can inject this greeting CDI bean and just set the message on it and return to the view. And in the view, we can access this with expression language to get the greeting.message. In this case is a JSP example. It will be pretty similar in the other market languages. Another way is if your view engine doesn't support CDI, it is recommended but optional to support CDI, then we provided a models object. And the models is more or less just a map. So you put your attributes to it. And the reason why it's called models is that there already is a model object in a model interface in JSF, and we don't want conflicts with that one. And in this case, you just access it from the map, like this. So it's pretty simple and straightforward. So let's look at the view engines. And we kind of created a new acronym. It's Bring Your Own View Engine. It's very pluggable, and it's a simple interface to implement, and you can use CDI discovery or a CDI producer for an engine-specific config object. And you can override it if you want to. And the interface is like this. You implement a method supports that says that this view engine supports this view. And that can be as simple as just check the file extension if it ends on JSP. And then you have the process view, which you can use the view engine context to render the view. And if you have conflicts in view engines, you have several view engines that can handle the same view, then you can give it a priority. So you can choose which view engine is going to be valid for your application. And JAX-RS comes with bean validation. So let's look at an example. If you have a controller here that just has a post method and it takes in a bean parameter from a form. And you have some bean validation methods, the @valid, that will throw a constraint validation exception if the contract isn't filled. For example, the @min or not null or whatever bean validation you have put on to bean. And in JAX-RS, you would probably have a form validation mapper that implements your exception mapper for a constraint validation exception. And it just processes and returns some error page. But what is the problem with this? Right? For a JAX-RS application, this is perfectly fine. But in a controller, you want a little bit more fine-grained control because you don't necessarily want to redirect to the same error page for every controller, because this will be all through your application. So the one size does not fit all here. That's why we added support that we call for binding results. So you inject a binding results in your controller, and then you can check if it's failed, and you can access the binding results or the validation errors and do some specific code out of it. And that means your controller code actually has to guard for errors. So you have very fine-grained control of what you want to do and how you want to get there. Since MVC leverages CDI, then all CDI scopes are available, and all controllers are by default in request scope. And that is what JAX-RS is about. But all CDI scopes are available, like the application, session, request, and conversation scope. And in addition to this, we defined another scope called redirect scope, which supports the post redirect get pattern. I'll show you an example here. So if you have the greeting bean that we looked at earlier, only now it's redirect scope and not request scope. That's the only difference. Then in my controller, I inject it as usual using CDI. So note here that the controller is still request scoped, but the bean is redirect scoped. So that means that when I post to this from method, and I'm redirected to the to method, I come in here in the controller for the to method, and it's the same bean, and I can access the same message. So it's the content is kept for post redirect get, and that's what redirect scope is about. We've also added support for security, and most specifically for cross-site request forgery. And we have an annotation. By default, the protection is off. So you as a developer has to say that I want this turned on. And then you can set it as implicit or explicit. And if you set it as implicit, then all post methods in all your controllers are validated. If it's explicit, then you need to put it at CSRF valid annotation on the methods that you want to have protection. And the way you do it is that in the form that you're posting, you can access the CSRSF object from the MVC context and set a name and a token in a hidden field, and the framework will evaluate it automatically. MVC reused the existing CDI event system, and that means that the applications can listen for events using observers. And that can be used for monitoring, debugging, tuning, etc. And the specification defines an order for these events. And the events that we are currently supporting are before controller event, after a controller event, before process view event, after process view event, and controller redirect event. And there may be more coming. These are the ones that are supported currently. An example for how you observe these events are that you simply, on before controller, for example, observes the before controller event and you do something. So to sum up the JSR 371 section of this presentation is that if you want to learn more about this JSR, you go into the project page on java.net. You can follow the mailing list and users at MVC spec java.net. And you can look at the reference implementation where you can have code samples and how you can download it and start playing around with it. And the reference implementation is called Ozark. And also all the code for MVC and the API and specification is available in GitHub. So you can just Google it up there and read about it. And the final version is scheduled to be part of Java EE8. That means it's planned for the first part of 2017. But it's probably ready before that. And it can already be used now as integrated in the nightly builds of Glassfish. And I think also Pyara supports this now. So you can actually start using MVC now. So with that, I'll let Rene test drive some of this.
Thank you, Ivar. Sorry. Well, what he said sounds very nice, and it makes always looks good on slides, right? So you find a lot of examples already for all this stuff that Ivar talked about, but actually what we want to see, and I have had my fair share in creating web frameworks. So I have a little bit of experience what people want, what they expect from the frameworks. And I was like, okay, let me do a little bit of a test drive and compare it a little bit to other frameworks and ask the most important session, is it real world? So can you use it in the real world already? When it comes out, will it be usable? So of course you want to see common problems addressed. You will look for solutions that the framework will provide you with. And is it on par with the competitors? So there are quite a few servlet-based web frameworks, notably basically two are left that are actively developed, which is Spring MVC. I think most people know it here in the room. Who knows it? Experience? Okay, fine. and I have to champion it. Struts 2? Oh, quite a few. Okay, fine. We're still good adoption, I would say. Actually, when I went to look at a framework, I look at my experience, and I would say Spring MVC arrived around 2005, and for me, it got ready for production around 2008, when Spring 2.5 came out. And the same goes for Struts 2, which formerly was called WebWorks. It has nothing to do with Struts 1 anymore, it's just rebranded. This started in 2004, but I wouldn't have used it. I did, this was my fault. I got dragged into fixing it. I wouldn't have used it if I had a choice in 2007. So basically this boils down to 3 years for both frameworks till getting real. So may I pose the question, should we all wait 3 years before giving a test drive or giving a try to MVC 1.0? But I think we don't need to be that pessimistic, because the approach the expert group took was quite cool, I would say, because they said, let's not reinvent the wheel, and let's look what we already have. And there is a lot of good stuff in the Java E space, which is you have JuxRS, that is an established framework. CDI is really, really powerful and been there for a long time now. You have bean validation, interceptors, and various view technologies that are already established. So it is not that we really expect MVC to be something that is doing quite a lot of stuff. It's just a top layer above these technologies and helps you to deal with certain problems. So another thing to note is, as Ivar already said, we have a lot of extension points in MVC 1.0. So what isn't there at the first release of the specification might be easily extended, but we will try to give it a test drive. So I talked about common problems. So what are these? One thing is clear, to print out simple hello world and show how nice these Pojo controllers are is not enough. So we have to do a little bit of a real world scenario, and of course it has to do something with CRUD, create, read, update, delete, and we will look into it, and we will try to understand what things we have to look after. So these are just a few. You can extend the list that you want to get help with. You want to have full support for dependency injection. We have various needs to support AJAX and passing validation messages to the view. So how is it done in these frameworks we look at, and especially in JSR 3.7.1? So for the basics, just a little bit of a comparison and giving a dimension to it. All the frameworks we look at are support dependency injection as a first-class citizen, which is really, really important these days. Struts is a little bit like just throw a dependency injector at me. I will work with it. Most notably, when you look at Spring MVC and at JSR 3.7.1, you will notice that you have to make a decision. So if you're coming from the Spring space, you have to switch over to CDI. But this is not a bad thing. And unfortunately, Spring, I don't think so. They will switch to CDI in the near future. So basically, you get another kind of dependency injection if you come from another framework, but that's not too bad. And all the nice stuff you would expect from dependency injectors, you will get even in JSR 3.7.1, which is also the scoped beans. And one of the most important scope that people don't realize that it is such important. Ivar talked about the post-redirect get pattern, which is something you should always apply to your stuff. And how do I get some information from the first request to the second request because the state is gone. So having support for something like redirect scope, or others call it flash scope, is something very important to solve your everyday needs. And actually, you have all this in the frameworks. Or let's talk about something controller technical decoupling of controllers. All three frameworks nowadays are POJO based. No more technical coupling to some parent classes you have within some technical framework. You can really leave HTTP servlet request, servlet response alone. You don't have to code against them, but you can if you like. So this is important as well, to have full control over what you are doing. And of course, all three frameworks try to address how to deal with the model and how to transport the model values to a view. So they slightly differ in how they do it, but they have good solutions for it. One thing that is tightly coupled to this is how testable is such a framework. Anyone tried to do tests with servlets or Struts 1 actions? Was it nice? Not for me, I would say. So nowadays you have POJOs as your controllers, and it is really easy to unit test them. And of course, if you use dependency injection, it's the same way you would test any dependency injected bean. And due to not being technically coupled, it's very easy to mock things out in your tests. As for integration tests, or maybe acceptance tests, the older frameworks like Spring MVC and like Struts 2 do have some supporting libraries and stuff they can help you with this topic. But, well, we said MVC is not inventing everything by itself. So interestingly, you can use some test tools that were already written for Jersey to help you do integration or acceptance testing. And maybe we will see more frameworks coming out. So another interesting part is that no one wants to be limited to one view technology. JSP is a little bit like, okay, people keep hoping it's dying. I think we will see it in many years. But anyway, we want to support many view technologies, and all these frameworks do. There are view technologies where they are better in supporting, and others where there's some basic support, I would say. So if you choose Spring MVC, the most natural fit is to go for JSP for ThymeLeaf. But these are really good view technologies for what you can achieve them. And basically, JSR 371 does the same. Every view is pluggable. What I find interesting is that they added support for facelets, and then I will go deeper into it because you can do some interesting things with it. So enough talk, enough slides. So let's look a little bit into code. And I tried to destroy the MVC, but let's see how it worked out. I've written a small example with the help of Ivar that tries to show some typical CRUD situation. It is about actors, which has nothing to do with typesafe or something. So we are in the cinema and...
Rene, I think you should mirror your screen so we can see it as well.
That's a good idea to do so. I mean, thank you.
IntelliJ is an excellent editor, but I don't think you can...
I think in IntelliJ 16 they will be trying to address auto mirroring when you switch from presentation. But you would go for NetBeans, wouldn't you?
I would go for NetBeans every day.
Not me. Okay, so what I try to do is to take all the three frameworks and give them a little test how such a thing would look like. So basically we want to show a list, just like here, and we want to add some new to it if we like, and of course we want to edit the existing ones. And we have different types of information that we show there. So what do we want as well? So if I am not an English-speaking person, I might have a browser setting, let's say German, which is my mother tongue, and then let's see what happens if I reload. So one thing to expect from such a framework is that it gives you internationalization options, I18N. And basically, if you look at this amount here, which is how many you would expect them to get by film or something like that, by movie, when I put in a floating value, we in Germany would do it with a comma. And if you save it, the backend understands it and says, okay, he's a German locale, so he put in a comma. And if I switch back to the English locale, then I would see that most probably I would be better off, just to reload, most probably I would be better off using a point, and there it is, yeah. And if I change the value, then it simply works. So these are the problem domains you want to have addressed. So let's see, we have some bean validation support, we want to have it. Let's look into the actual code, and we have added some bean validation annotations inside it, and we want to be able to use it without any further fuss. So let's see if we make Mr. Daniel Craig a little bit shorter for the first name, how it works out. And basically, you see that you will get some error messages, validation messages. And it would be nice if these messages were next to the place where I've made the error. So this is something that is nice if you are developing such an application. Okay, and one thing to notice, just in case you didn't realize it, we always used Dirk. Oh, it was great, wasn't it? Every single save that we perform here is actually a post redirect get. So you will notice this if you do just a simple reload. There is no post, no question that form submission has to be done again, because we really redirect it to the actual view that shows the actor that we are looking at. So no, it wasn't. He will get very angry at me. So basically, how it is done. So when we compare the three frameworks, we see that all three frameworks nowadays are really short in what you have to do in the controller code. So this is the Struts 2 action, this is the Spring controller, and there's really no much technical code, not much code at all, a little bit of configuration and stuff like that. And really the controller in the JSR 371 is quite comparable to what you would use in Spring MVC. And nothing to look for, really. It's very easy to go in the controller space. So next question is how to interpret what we would like to see in the views. And the three frameworks have different concepts of how they want to deal with the views. Struts is a little bit like we give you one-stop solution for this, and we take a little bit care of everything. It's a little bit like JSF, so you get high-quality components a bit. If you don't want to fill with the HTML stuff and all the internationalization stuff you have seen is solved by the framework. Spring actually does things a little bit differently and says, okay, we have just a little bit tiny layer of things that we want to provide from the back end, from the server side to the front end. That is of course, dealing with these validation messages, but in the end, you're totally free to do what you like. So it's up to the Vue technology to help you with some things, like iterating over stuff and that. And it can get quite noisy if you use a Thymeleaf template, but in the end, it's quite easy to work with it, and it's quite easy to throw it at your designer, so that he or she can work with it and have really good example view to deal with. What is interesting about the MVC spec is it shares the concept of being quite flexible on the one hand, but it has also the possibility that you can use higher level components. And I'm not talking about Polymer or the other upcoming web parts things that will be nice for all these stuff as well. This is, you can use, if you switch to one of the must-supported technologies, Vue technologies, if you switch to facelets, you can reuse components from the JSF world, which is quite strange, was quite strange to me to realize. But actually, you can do nice stuff with it, and you can work with frameworks like ice faces, prime faces, how they call, well, everything you name. It's okay. I'm not sure everything will work out nicely, but in the end, it's quite easy to work with it. And you see, depending on what Vue technology you have used, things are quite easy. The binding part, for example, binding to the back-end beans is quite easy in the Vue technology of choice. So let's look a little bit deeper into the fields that I said are nice if they are somehow solved. One of which is internationalization. Both Spring MVC and MVC 1.0 say, okay, if you want internationalized messages, just leave it to the Vue engine. Which is for Spring MVC, you get a little bit of support by Spring, and there's a little bit of binding goodness in Thymeleaf, because Thymeleaf has a special module to support Spring MVC. It remains to be seen if there will be a special module to support the MVC 1.0 spec, which shouldn't be too hard to see this extension in future. On the other hand, when we look at these, we look at this. Everything you want, you know from JSF and the facelet space about internationalization will work here. So you can just go and do it as you would do it normally in some facelets or in the Vue technology of choice, and you have this solution around. What about localization? Localization, I mean when you bind form values to the target type, you will want to have it formatted depending on your locale, which we showed earlier. Here it turns out that this is something that the MVC spec doesn't address. So if we look at the actual bean that we are using as a form bean here, a domain bean here, the actor bean, we do have something of type float here, but actually this is quite a simple model so far that says, okay, there is something that I can take as a string and convert into the target type, but you will not have out of the box MVC 1.0 the support to, let's say, apply a number format. But one of the nice things is you can use it because you can extend the framework. The framework has extension points to do so. We will later on show you something that we've hacked, or especially Ivar hacked a few minutes ago to support very interesting use case. So one thing to note about binding values is there's a little bit of the return of the form bean we see in MVC specification. Most people having worked with the modern frameworks in regards to Struts 1 will know the concept of using the entity beans maybe for direct form binding in the web space. So not having some special value objects to get the value out of the form and then converting it to the entity values. It's just like bind to the entities. You can do this with MVC as well. It was solved by Jersey. So when you run the example, you will see that it's quite easy that here the integer values get bound, but you will have to use something from Jersey to tell it that you want a binding here. So you basically have to use a Jersey annotation, which is form param, that will tell Jersey, okay, I want to bind this attribute to the following part of the form you get in. This is a little bit that people might not want to see, because as such, the Jersey annotation bleed into the domain objects. But the good thing is it's just annotations. So it's not that you have to extend any class or interface or stuff like that comes from Jersey. It's just an annotation. So everyone else will not take care of it. It's just a binding you will get as a jar afterwards. Okay, what's interesting besides that? So the MVC specification does support binding in a way that you would like to see. So you just say, I want to work with something, some property called first name, and then if I do a get on the form, I want to see this in the input field, and if I do a save of the form, I want to have it in the form being later. So this is addressed, as Ivar already said. We have the concept of bean parameters, which allow for easy binding. And if you add one more annotation, you will have the bean validation kick in. So it's quite easy to do some of the common problems and address them. What is not addressed is how to deal with errors, getting them to the front and maybe separating it to various address it to fields. But anyway, this is a nice example on how good it is to extend. This is a quite crude extension which we used for the new pattern for the new creation of an actor, and it basically says, okay, we take the binding results that we have injected, go through it, and add the error messages to the model so that we can look at them in the resulting view. And if you go there and see what we have done, just save this one. It's a very easy extension. We haven't made too much time out of it to work on it. Very easy extension that you can transport such messages to the view. So this problem is addressed. What is not addressed currently, I would say, is binding this a little bit more to the actual fields. But this is something you can easily do even when the specification is released. So one particular thing I stumbled about was it is quite interesting that you have both ways, catching form parameters and applying it to form beans, and of course getting your form bean out of your service domain here and doing something to view it in the actual HTML. Interestingly, for the read part of the binding, you will always have a prefix, which is the model object that the name of the model object that you will put as a named bean if using CDI scope beans, or if you use a key to attach it to the models object, which I choose here for this example. Actually, when you are catching the values from a form, they will assume that there is no prefix. So you do, for read binding, you have actor.lastName, and for write binding, you have last name. So currently, in the current state of the specification, you will have to write this twice. So you see here, this is the read binding, which is actor.firstName, because we have a model object called actor. But when we want to post the form, we want to display the values as first name only, no actor dot. Will be nice to see if in the final specification things like this will be addressed. One particular thing I really like about the first part of the state of the very first specification is that some problems you really have in reality are addressed that are not such kind of common knowledge. The CSRF protection, which is quite hard to understand why it is a security problem. The CSRF protection is something you would like to have for really productive applications. Some people don't know the same technology that helps you enhancing your security will help you to avoid double posts. So basically, it serves two needs, and you can use it right away with the first specification. That is, you simply, if you go to the new use case, you simply put this CSRF token into your view, and once you have it there, you can only hit save once. So the second time you won't be able to create a new actor based on this one. This is something where many people have lost a lot of time solving this problem for each of the projects they made. And having it from day one is quite nice. These examples you can explore more on our GitHub page. You maybe want to look a little bit more into it, which is Action Framework Comparison at this URL. And basically, what I would like to say as someone who has some experience in how these web frameworks work and how it is to create such a web framework, I would say they've done a pretty good job. No, this is the wrong kind of mirroring. Yeah, here. They've done a really good job with what they've done so far, and they had really good decision made, jumping on the bandwagon of using Jersey and having so much things solved already. So it's really lightweight, easy to extend, and the common needs are quite good addressed. So I would say it is a really good first shot, and there are some glitches left which can be addressed by the people using it, and I think we will see some things before the final draft will be released.
Yes. Yeah. So what Rene says here is there are some glitches, there are some things that are missing, and as any specification, we are totally dependent on the people doing work, the community building application using this framework to contribute. And you can contribute by subscribing to the mailing lists, by reading the Jira issues, by contacting the experts, by joining the expert group. The JCP is totally open for everybody to join, and we're really dependent on getting input so we get it right. And as Rene said, this is version 1.0, and I'm sure there will be later versions of the specification as well. But the better we can get it at the first shot, the better it is. So we are really depending on input from the community.
And maybe you could also champion for this specification to get more implementations, or try it yourself, by the way, or even take someone from the Apache Struts project to maybe make an implementation of it, to have more implementations than just Ozark.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions?
There's one back there.
Yes. So I repeat the question for you. Spring has the concept of session attributes and session scope beans to store things between requests. What's the take of MVC?
Yeah, that's a good question, and of course we support the session scopes. We support all CDI scopes, so you just have a session scope bean that you set your attribute, and it's available throughout the session. So it's just a regular session scoped CDI bean.
You shouldn't use it. You should stay stateless. Any more questions? So not so far. If you like, you can follow us on Twitter and ask more questions, or just come here, swing by, and ask you questions. We'll be here for a few minutes.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.